Recording in progress.
Welcome everyone to the Texas PACE Authority's T5 third Thursday at 2 training for March 17th, 2022. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Today we're going to be hearing about new tools available through the Department of Energy, the Commercial PACE Toolkit, as well as a new market assessment tool. And we have a guest presenter today with us, Sean Williamson, who I'll introduce in a moment. My name is Dub Taylor, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Texas PACE Authority. And I will be driving the slides, at least for the first portion, before we hand it over to Sean. So today's webinar, everyone is going to be muted and your video disabled to preserve bandwidth. So please, if you have questions, and we encourage questions, use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, not the chat. And if you're interested in receiving credit or a PDH certificate for this webinar, you will get a survey after the webinar concludes, and there'll be an option there to request that. We're happy to send you that as well. This webinar is going to be recorded and is going to be posted on our website and YouTube channel, along with other webinars that we've done. And so if you missed part of what's being said today, you'll have an opportunity to review it later. And if you have colleagues that you think might be interested in attending the webinar but weren't able to make it today, then they can have an opportunity to view it later. As I mentioned, all the T5 webinars are listed here. If you go to our website and under resources, the T5 webinar section, you'll see dating back to April of 2020 through just February last month, where we talked about our program guide updates. And so as a reminder, the problem really we're trying to address through PACE and through Commercial PACE is this one. And that is that business owners know that they can save money over long term by making investments in improved energy efficiency and water efficiency at their properties. But these upgrades come with a price tag. They can be expensive. They can be cost prohibitive, at least initially. And even if the owner has the capital to pay for these projects, they have competing projects in mind, or maybe other things that are maybe core mission oriented. And so oftentimes they get kicked down the road and never completed, never done. And so what happens is this results in failing equipment that gets replaced on an emergency basis. Chillers go out in the summer, typically, not in the winter, and they're replaced kind of on an emergency ad hoc basis with usually a higher cost, a premium. And when you replace component by component, there's really no system optimization across the building that would happen if you had an integrated project approach, and PACE can allow for that. And then with new construction, what happens is, the things behind the walls typically get cut first in the budget, and through this process of value engineering, and I have that in quotes because really this is perceived value, but it really comes back to haunt you down the road, means that again, these decisions made at the front end of a project have lasting effects on operating costs and performance through the life of the building, and PACE can address this. So all this results in higher operating costs and are really necessary, lower building performance. The asset valuation is not where it could be. You could also have indoor comfort and air quality challenges, lower productivity, and indirectly negative environmental benefits. So that's the problem. And a solution for this is PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing. The F is not part of the acronym, but that's really what this is. It's a financing tool that can provide long-term 100% funding for certain energy efficiency, water efficiency, and distributed generation projects. In Texas, that's what qualifies. Some other states, California, for example, seismic hardening is eligible. Florida, storm hardening is eligible, understandably. And this is private financing. This is not government financing, but it's secured by a special governmental assessment, a property assessment, that remains in place over the financing term, which is typically the useful life of the improvements. In Texas, state law authorizes PACE. This is under Local Government Code, Chapter 399. And local governments then individually create PACE programs in accordance with the state law. We have 77 cities and counties now that have done this, covering about 70% of the state's population. It's a voluntary and open market approach in Texas, meaning that we don't have a prescribed list of lenders or contractors. Any owner can choose any contractor and any lender and put the deal together and run it through the PACE mechanism. And in Texas, what's eligible is commercial properties, including nonprofits. The very first project in the state was actually a synagogue, multifamily units, 5 units or more, apartment complexes, and any sort of industrial or manufacturing or agricultural. But the only type of property that's not eligible is a single family residential or residential that is 4 units or smaller. In our role in this, the Texas PACE Authority is we work for cities and counties to run their PACE programs. That's all we do. Some other PACE administrators may provide capital, they may do bond advising, they may do other things. That's not what we do. All we do is PACE administration. We're a 7-year-old nonprofit. And I always like to say we really officiate the process. The property owners select the capital provider, the service provider, they put the PACE project together, and we ensure that it meets all the requirements under state law and under local guidelines. And so getting to our guest presenter, I'm happy to have join us today, Sean Williamson, who I've known for some time and worked with in the PACE context and others. He is a policy advisor for the U.S. Department of Energy. He provides technical support to state and local governments on various energy efficiency and renewable energy projects and activities. He specializes in financing, P3, bond financing, and PACE. And then he also has coordinated the Department of Energy's Commercial PACE Working Group, which was operational from 2018 to 2020. And so with that, Sean, I will hand it over to you and let you run with it.
Thank you, Dub. Appreciate it. Let me bring up my slides here. And Dub, if you can give me a thumbs up, you know that's.
Yep, you're good.
Looking good. All right. Hi, and thank you, Dub. Thank you, Charlene and the Texas PACE Authority for inviting me to speak on this webinar. My name is Sean Williamson. As Dub said, I'm a policy advisor in DOE's Office of Weatherization and Intergovernmental Programs, and the coordinator of DOE's now sunsetted Commercial PACE Working Group. I'm excited to share DOE's recently released Commercial PACE Toolkit with you all today. The resources shared today are years in the making, have been informed by experts and stakeholders throughout the US, and are designed to build upon and fill gaps in existing resources. It's truly been a labor of love to work with and for the CPACE community. So I'm very excited to be here today, hopefully speaking to many folks I know, and looking forward to seeing some familiar names on the call later as we get into some Q&A. Our goal with the CPACE Toolkit and all of DOE's commercial PACE technical assistance is to support state and local governments with understanding and adopting CPACE, helping to address barriers and ensuring we can learn from lessons learned from early leaders such as Texas to grow the market and accelerate clean energy adoption. So today I want to cover DOE's Commercial PACE Working Group, our recently released Commercial PACE Toolkit, take a real quick look at one resource that's a couple years old, but I think is really valuable in the context of communicating and coordinating with local governments, take a deeper dive into our new energy and building market assessment tool, and then open up the floor for some discussion. U.S. Department of Energy's Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Toolkit is an outcome of our CPACE working group. The working group represents 3 years of partnership in 2018 and 2020 of state and local governments that work together to learn about, launch, and refine CPACE financing programs. The working group achieved $70 million in CPACE finance projects during that period, exceeding the goal of $60 million that we set for ourselves 2 years early. This includes efficiency upgrades across an estimated 2.6 million square feet and 20 buildings. Partner achievements included 75% of our partners have launched a program since starting the CPACE working group, and 40% have completed projects. This is as of last summer. Our collaboration with more than 70 participants, including more than 30 state and local government participants listed on this slide, resulted in tools and resources to inform public sector CPACE program development and implementation. State and local governments can use these resources to build a foundational understanding of CPACE, inform the decision to start a program, improve implementation, and apply CPACE to support a range of public purpose objectives. Just for context of the geographic scope of the CPACE working group, here's a look at our state and local participants. We did have participants ranging from partners, observers, and advisors. We also had both states and cities, as well as counties. The CPACE Toolkit is a 4-part compilation of resources that any state or local government can use to navigate barriers and benefit from CPACE financing. Toolkit resources support best practices and innovative approaches successfully used by states and local governments to establish, join, or design a CPACE program, implement a program, and generate project uptake, as well as apply for CPACE to support underserved communities or advance resilience objectives. Some of these areas of special interest that we often hear from states and local governments is being interested in. I want to spotlight 2 items in the toolkit on today's call. First, let's take a quick look at an issue brief that was prepared by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, Commercial PACE Financing and Special Assessment Process. Second, we'll take a deeper dive into the recently released Energy and Building Market Assessment Tool. It looks like the slides are stuck on my end. I'm not sure what folks are seeing.
Yeah, I see that too. You might want to close it and reopen. Not sure what's going on there.
Okay. Apologies. Having some computer issues at the moment. Okay, I'm gonna see what I can do outside of my other computing system, which is just giving me a hard time at the moment. This has never happened before. Let's see what I can do. Okay, I can at least attempt to share the CPACE toolkit outside of my other system as I figure that out. I'll just direct folks to DOE's State and Local Solution Center. This is where you can find the CPACE toolkit.
We can see that, Sean. That's good.
Okay, wonderful. The way the toolkit is structured is it's kind of got the value proposition for states and local governments when they first come in here. And then it very quickly kind of gets into understanding what's in the toolkit. There's a short 2-page overview document that you can download and quickly kind of determine what's in the toolkit, what might be there for you. And it's broken out into 4 pieces. So part 1 is CPACE 101, building a foundation. Part 2 is establish, join, or design a program. And here I want to highlight an issue brief that was prepared by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, which is this commercial PACE financing, the special assessment process. understanding roles and managing risks for local governments. And part 3 is implement a program and generate uptake. And part 4 is our topics of special interest. And I also know what I tend to dig into a little bit deeper today, also in the establish, join, or design a program section, is the energy and building market assessment tool, commercial PACE application. And here you can download the Excel file as well as the user guide for the tool. So it's going to be pretty difficult for me to do my tutorial of the tool without my access to my network here. So let me try to do that on the side. I apologize about this. Okay, well, that boots back up. Let me very quickly tell folks about these Lawrence Berkeley National Lab briefs. The first in the series of briefs is commercial PACE financing and special assessment process, understanding roles and managing risk for local governments. This brief was developed as a resource that directly addresses the most common questions and concerns we typically hear from local governments. So one of the frequently asked questions we hear about is, one, what's the level of staff commitment that local governments need to commit to make a CPACE program work? And number 2, what's the likelihood of these projects defaulting, and what does that mean for the risks that we take on? And so key findings from this issue brief include that to date, defaults and tax foreclosures happen very rarely, but delinquencies do occur. So since 2008, only one CPACE project has defaulted out of about 1,870 completed projects. And this was, mind you, published in 2020. Delinquencies are more common. However, lenders and program administrators can work with property owners, mortgage holders, and other creditors to get payments back on track. And this issue brief includes some important considerations and lessons learned to help local governments prepare for possible defaults. Also, unless a local government has directly provided capital or credit enhancements for the projects, a foreclosure will not impact the jurisdiction's financial standing. And local governments are not responsible for making CPACE payments to third-party lenders, even if the participant misses payments. Another finding from this issue brief is that there's a trend towards third-party administration that signals reduced local government effort. Increasingly, CPACE program sponsors are adopting program administrative structures in which third parties take on many or most administrative responsibilities, even those traditionally the responsibility of local governments. So this can include recording, billing, collections, remittances, and even enforcement. And that's all I wanted to cover on that particular resource. And now I believe I've got my slides back up. So let's give this another try on the screen share. All right, that should have pivoted back to the PowerPoint. So at this point, I'd like to take a deeper dive into the second resource from the toolkit that I want to highlight today. And that's the Energy and Building Market Assessment tool. This tool, developed by Pacific Northwest National Lab with feedback from the working group, can provide jurisdictions with local building and energy data, estimations, and analyses to inform CPACE program creation, planning, and implementation. It's available for any US state, county, or city with more than 1,000 commercial buildings. The tool was developed to address two persistent barriers we repeatedly hear from state and local governments. First, that jurisdictions aren't able to quantify the energy savings potential at the jurisdiction level and are therefore unable to justify the effort associated with launching a CPACE program. Second, jurisdictions with programs have limited resources to market the program and coordinate partnerships with property owners, contractors, and others. And the tool is designed to help them more strategically and efficiently allocate those resources to target the high impact partnerships and projects. It can be used to demonstrate energy savings opportunity in a state or county and to set goals for what a program can possibly achieve, or the runway. Because the tool presents detailed information on high potential building types and retrofit technologies, CPACE program sponsors and administrators can use the information to efficiently target their resources. The tool and underlying methodology marry data from DOE's city and county commercial building inventory sourced from CoStar, the Energy Information Administration's Commercial Buildings Energy Consumption Survey, or CBEX, DOE's Scout tool, and more. The tool produces a customized report for any jurisdiction, including an executive summary with actionable takeaways and 3 sections that focus on commercial building characteristics, energy usage characteristics, and energy and dollar savings estimates associated with specific building retrofits, with details presented by building use type, building size, and more. So the table on this slide demonstrates one of the many useful outputs produced by the tool, which a state or local government user can leverage to understand the energy savings potential in the jurisdiction. I am going to exit out of screen share because I think that was a big problem and what was bogging down my system. So hopefully folks can see this. I apologize if it's not as clear. Before I do a quick tutorial of the tool, I want to get ahead of some potential questions from attendees and address some limitations of the tool, as well as dig into the data sources some more. So there are some things the tool cannot do. There are some intended uses for the tool and other uses for which the tool was not designed. The information provided by this report does not predict the cost or energy savings of a specific CPACE program, the level of CPACE program uptake that might occur in the jurisdiction, or the suitability of CPACE financing for a particular building. The tool is intended to assess markets in aggregate, that is multiple buildings and not a single building. There's no multifamily properties, enclosed malls, or laboratories included due to incompatible data to conduct the analysis. It exclusively focuses on the commercial sector, so there's no industrial or agricultural properties. It also does not include water savings estimates, which I understand are really a key piece within Texas. And there's reduced accuracy or no analysis available for smaller building counts. And so that's just something to be mindful of. If there's a city with fewer than 1,000 buildings, you will actually not be able to produce a report with the tool. But if you have counties with fewer than 1,000 buildings, it will, but the accuracy becomes diminished as you get fewer and fewer buildings. Just hitting on the data sources quickly. DOE's commercial building inventory is publicly available. You can actually go there and look at some pretty high resolution information based on whatever jurisdiction, state or local government you're looking at. This is all sourced from CoStar. It does come from 2019 data. And the way the tool is designed is that data is basically locked in. It will not update until we manually update it in a couple of years with new CoStar data, which is something we're planning to do. Additionally, CBEX data comes from 2012. The most recent CBEX survey results will be fully available later this year. I believe by the end of the year, they will all be. and we plan to fully integrate those results into the next version of this tool. And additionally, DOE Scout tool is a very powerful tool for estimating energy savings from different retrofits, given climate and other considerations. And I'll dig into that in just a minute. Okay, so let's start our tutorial of the tool. So the tool itself is an Excel file. It's just 2 tabs. It's very, very easy to use. The first thing the user needs to ask themselves is, what am I looking at? What's the level of analysis? Do I want to look at the state, a particular city, or a county? And so for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to select city, state of Texas, and then let's see the county line is blocked out here because it's looking for cities, not counties. And it lists all of our cities in Texas. And so let's go ahead and pick San Antonio. It's just an example. And once you've made that selection, your other tab, the report PDF, will automatically populate. And this is what it looks like. Right at the top, you'll see this is how you know the tool is working. It'll list the state and city that you're looking for. And it gets right into the index, the contents, the executive summary. Now, what I suggest, and this is in the inputs tab, is that folks export this to a PDF. It will make reading it, sharing it a little bit easier, more digestible. So I've actually gone ahead and done that and am prepared to share that here. So here is our market assessment report for the city of San Antonio, Texas. I'm going to walk us through the different components of this, try to get into some of the more technical pieces just to make sure folks can understand what's in here and what's not here. So first, the executive summary. There are a lot of tables and charts in this report. It's a lot to digest. The executive summary is really meant to be something bite-sized, something standalone that a busy executive can look at. All of the tables and charts below kind of feed into the executive summary, as you would expect. And it has kind of some summary statistics, as well as some key charts, tables, and actionable items. Sort of the first thing I will point out is that in the summary of analysis paragraph, this actually tells us how many buildings we're looking at, how many total buildings are included in that jurisdiction, plus how many are excluded. So as I mentioned before, so the limitations are that we do not include multifamily buildings, laboratories, enclosed malls. And so it's good to know what's included in the analysis and what's excluded. This is also broken down by square footage. So in San Antonio, we're looking at a total of 556 million square feet. But actually, of that amount, 265 million are excluded. That's mostly because those are multifamily properties for which we know something about those buildings, their size, their age, how many of them there are, but we're not able to estimate energy usage or energy savings in those multifamily buildings. But as the report says, those multifamily buildings shouldn't be discounted as an opportunity for CPACE. We're just not able to include them in this analysis. And then you pretty quickly get into building characteristics. And so this is just, what are your top 3 building types by number of buildings, by floor area, and by vintage. I can also zoom into this a little bit. Hopefully that makes it easier for folks to see. Also some high-level characteristics on energy usage. So what are the top 3 building types by overall energy usage and normalized by floor area? And then we kind of get into a summary figure here that looks at energy use intensity or energy used per square foot per year. You know, a lot of this makes sense that food service and food sales tend to be pretty high due to cooking and refrigeration. Some of those facilities, because their assets are not affixed, may not be appropriate for CPACE, so that's helpful context to have. How energy savings potential is estimated, I will share some more on that a little bit later, but there's a nice kind of summary paragraph here for executives to kind of realize the modeling and the methodology behind how the energy estimates are being calculated. So I think this is really the backbone of these reports, and where a lot of decision makers want to look is the energy and financial savings potential associated with retrofitting these buildings. I will highlight, there are 2 kind of key tables here, and I will explain them a bit more below, but one is the lifetime net savings potential. This is in thousands of US dollars, and this might be, you'll notice if you work in smaller counties, this actually may adjust to just US dollars. It may also adjust to millions of US dollars if it's a much larger jurisdiction. So that's just something to keep in mind, that the units do change. And this actually only includes retrofits with SIR greater than 1. And there's some reasons for this, I'll get to it later, but the way the report's structured is it actually covers savings potential for projects with SIR greater than 1, as well as for all projects regardless of SIR. The second kind of punchy table here for executives is total lifetime energy savings potential. And again, you see the way this is structured is it's by building use type, as well as by retrofits. There's a number of kind of independent retrofits here, insulations, windows, heat pumps, chillers, boilers, and then you've also got a combined retrofit, which I'll cover a bit more below. And then we get into our actionable takeaways for decision makers. Again, meant to be a pretty punchy spot with some high-level stats that could be compelling to decision makers using this tool or looking at the results. So for San Antonio, I think you see here right off the bat that just understanding the commercial building energy savings potential of the more than 15,000 buildings included in the analysis, nearly 100% are estimated to have at least one cost-effective energy efficiency upgrade available, and 74% are estimated to have at least 4 different cost-effective retrofit measures available. Further, in San Antonio, 98%, or again, a little over 15,000 buildings, have a cost-effective combined retrofit that includes a rooftop heat pump, hot water heat pump, and integrated LED. And if all these buildings underwent this combined retrofit, the estimated energy savings would exceed 116,000 giga BTUs across the useful lifespan of that technology. And so CPACE can obviously unlock a significant portion of this energy savings potential, and it's really a great way to understand the runway that exists in a given jurisdiction. So that sort of summarizes the executive summary, and just to continue to run through the other components in the report. The introduction is really just more background on some of the limitations, the methodology, why this tool was created. Part 2 really just digs into key building characteristics summary data. So we're really not talking about energy use yet. And there are 4 key tables in this One of the tables looks at building size and count information by building use type. And this segments by under 10,000 square feet and over 10,000 square feet. That tends to be a pretty valuable threshold for thinking about things such as building performance standards and some other kind of context that is a pretty useful way to think about which buildings are above or below that threshold. Again, you'll see multifamily is included here. We had this data for multifamily. It's taking the energy savings and applying it to multifamily where we did not have the right analytical capabilities. Our second tool, our second table in this section looks at, again, building use type by vintage. So what's the age of buildings in this jurisdiction? What's the average age? How many buildings within a certain age span? So this can be a really useful way to, again, identify where the oldest buildings are that maybe have the most potential to be upgraded. Our next table looks at occupancy type, ranging between combined, occupied, and leased to a tenant, owner occupied, or simply not applicable. And then our last ownership, or our last table looks at ownership type distribution. Again, all of our major building use types, but broken down by, are they owned by governments, individual owners, nonprofits, etc. So the third section of the report really gets into energy use. The fourth section is energy savings potential. So in the energy use portion, there's really just two key tables and a figure. The first table just looks at buckets, again, based by size. So how much energy is used and the number of buildings in that category. So under 10,000 square feet, between 10 and 50,000 square feet, or over 50,000 square feet, and then all buildings. So you get a sense of how many buildings are there and how much energy is used by those types of buildings. And then our table 6 looks at the energy consumption disaggregated by end use and building use type. And this is a repeat of that figure we looked at in the executive summary. And then our retrofit cost and savings is the last section in the report. And again, this gets pretty technical and I'll spend a little bit more time here. So the energy savings analysis includes 9 individual retrofit measures and a combined retrofit, which is a package of 3 individual measures that are often the most cost-effective or most high impact retrofits for commercial buildings. So they include rooftop heat pump, hot water heat pump, and integrated LEDs. The energy savings is modeled with these 3 measures together, and the combination of energy savings is always less than the sum of the individual energy savings in the buildings. And so to meet the SIR greater than 1 threshold, the sum of the individual retrofit costs must be less than the combined modeled energy savings. And the combined retrofit is treated as a package. So even if 1 or 2 of the individual measures are cost effective, if all 3 are not cost effective together, the retrofit is not applied to that building in the data model. And I also just want to take a look at the individual retrofits so folks can kind of see what we're looking at here. And again, looking at the useful life, the energy savings, the cost of these retrofits, a lot of this comes from either the advanced energy design guides or the National Building Cost Manual. And all of the assumptions and different retrofits are all kind of listed out here. So you can kind of get a sense for how these things all roll up into individual buildings and the model results. And so section 4 is broken down into two parts, 4.1 and 4.2. 4.1 are all of our tables that only include buildings for which retrofits have an SIR greater than 1. And so one table here is just the number of buildings by a retrofit technology and use type, only considering an SIR greater than 1. Our next table here is floor area in thousands of square feet. Again, only retrofits with an SIR greater than 1. And then we've got a table that looks at gross savings. This is before considering the costs of the retrofits. And then we've got net savings after the cost of the retrofits. And so just kind of the takeaway here is the combined retrofit that includes those 3 measures completed across all buildings would achieve $730 billion. I think I'm adding 3 zeros there. I think it's 730 million. So that's kind of the punchy takeaway. And then you can break that out by the component building types to get a sense for where there might be more opportunity areas versus not. There's also a table on lifetime energy savings. And then just to bring us down the home stretch here, the last section in the report is looking at all buildings, regardless of SIR. And users most likely to be interested in this section maybe do not yet have an established CPACE program, and they're interested in the overall potential for energy savings in a jurisdiction's commercial building stock, regardless of the cost effectiveness. And the reason we broke this out is once we started to do things such as the net savings, we saw that there are a lot of buildings included that were newer or maybe have already been retrofitted. And we saw a lot of negative results within the regardless of SIR space. And so just for context and making sure that there were 2 different ways to look at this depending on your needs and objectives, we broke out the analysis by with SIR greater than 1 and regardless of SIR. So there's a table on total energy savings, gross savings, and yeah, that is it. And I will pause here to answer any questions. I told Dub I've got a few more slides just to share folks on our way out the door. But while I've got the energy and building market assessment tool up, where I think there will probably be the most questions, I'm happy to keep this up and address any questions that are out there.
Thanks, Sean. So if you have any questions, you can type them into the Q&A and we'll get to those right now. And while you're thinking about what those might be, just an observation and then a clarification from my perspective. One, we were fortunate that we sort of got an earlier version, test drive of this tool last year, working with a city that we serve. And they found this was actually our partner there is at the Council of Governments level. So they cover cities and counties within a pretty large metro area. And they were very interested. They'd never seen the data like this presented this way, even though they understood PACE, the opportunities. And so they saw immediate value in this. And I think at that point, it wasn't a kind of a self-serve model the way it was now, but they immediately requested, could we do this for another jurisdiction? So I think the value of this is tremendous. And the fact that, I don't know what the total coverage is, Sean, but, most every city and county, in the state where PACE programs operate in Texas is covered. But to have a, custom, 38-page report with executive summary for each city and county on PACE opportunity is tremendous. We also had a city that had seen this also, and this was the Economic Development Department that analyzes data and looks for economic development opportunities all over their footprint. And they, after they produced the report, spent a lot of time really kind of drilling down into the data to better identify, where those marketing efforts should be channeled. So really, I think it's a great tool, and compliments to the thinking behind it and DOE for producing this. That's the long-winded observation. The question I had, and really just a clarification, and this happened to me the first time I went in and actually used the tool. When you go into the tool in the tab and line out the selection criteria for the city, county, and state there, I did that, and then I was looking all over for a run button or something to actually run the report, and I didn't realize that it was just the other tab. So once you've completed those selections in the yellow boxes there that you see now, the other tab will be the report. There's not a second run or request report or anything like that. So
that's right. Yeah, it's very easy, and it's something we could possibly add here. I think that's very satisfying to hit the run button. Maybe you could just take someone to the new tab.
Yeah, I think I'm conditioned to that, and then I clicked on the other tab, and there the report was. So, oh well, that was even easier.
Yes, for sure. One place where folks often get stuck is the analysis level. If you don't select that, the other pieces won't work. But otherwise, it's pretty foolproof.
There is a question here, Sean, from Charlene. I'll read it. You may be able to see it also. But Sean, do you know if this information would be useful for a city or county putting together grant bids for the upcoming federal competitive resiliency infrastructure funding?
Yeah, it's a good question. I am not sure about the applications or the bids. I think that could definitely be useful. I think, as you know, states and local governments receive funding under the bipartisan infrastructure law, and they've got to roll up their sleeves and really get some work done. I imagine this and a multitude of other DOE tools would be really helpful to do energy efficiency, conservation planning, grid modernization, etc. I can't speak to the application process itself, and what sorts of questions and how deeply those applicants will need to go, and whether or not this tool will be valuable. I think it will definitely, it can't hurt. It will put applicants in a stronger position to understand and kind of say, here's what the savings potential or runway might be. Here's what we know about level of interest or who might participate in our particular program or project if we get something, if we receive these funds. So yeah, I definitely see it as a tool at some point, either kind of pre-application or post receipt of a grant for states and local governments.
And can you clarify, so when this tool was developed, as I recall, it was developed specifically for CPACE, but it sounds like maybe there are some plans to have the CPACE be an application of the tool, but maybe expand it beyond that. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right, Dub. I'm currently working with Kevin Keene at Pacific Northwest National Lab. You actually see his name on the opening tab here. He's a great resource, really brilliant scientist who's helped to lead the development of this tool. And he is going to help to modify it to, one, sort of look at the MUSH market in particular. That is a segment of the commercial building market that's kind of intentionally excluded, because when we first developed this, we were thinking about commercial PACE and non-public buildings. But there is a lot of potential within the MUSH market. So we're hoping to narrow in on them and fold them into this tool, as well as incorporate some features such as greenhouse gas savings estimates possible through different retrofits. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things we're hoping to create within the next, I would say probably 8 to 12 months is at least an assessment at state level of the mush market runway that exists. And one of the tricky things is the mush market is not as big as the commercial market as a whole. So we may not be able to dig as deeply into local governments, municipalities, counties, cities. That's kind of to be determined. It's a matter of data size and how strong the accuracy can be.
And MUSH, for folks not familiar with that acronym, is municipal, university, state and hospital, sort of the non-federal public sector, state and local governments. So that's would cover that area. A question that is here, and I think you could probably point to different parts of the report that address this, but what are the units for energy and dollars that are used in the charts?
Great question. So I will say all of the energy is rolled up into BTUs. Depending on the size of the jurisdiction, the tool will automatically customize to giga BTUs versus mega BTUs. But it does include both electricity and natural gas. So direct and indirect fuel sources are rolled into just one metric there. The tool does not currently disaggregate by the fuel type. All of the dollars are in US dollars, and that is an important consideration because we are using the retrofit costs from a series of manuals and guides that are published between 2017 and 2020. So to the degree there is inflation in the economy, these numbers become a little outdated as you try to think about what these retrofits will cost. So there's another kind of need to update the tool there in a couple of years as we get better data and want to have a true reflection of the current economy.
And those charts also, like the energy charts, adjust to scale depending on the jurisdictions. So the dollar-wise, I saw.
That's right. Yep. Some are in
Yep.
thousands, some are in millions, depending on the size of the jurisdiction.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay. I don't see any more questions. I did notice that earlier one of the participants put in the direct link to the toolkit. So thank you for that. You can just click on that, but it's also pretty easy to find. Don't see any more questions. Sean, do you want to hit your wrap up slides, and then we'll wrap for the day?
Yeah, that sounds great, Dub. So just as parting resources for folks, again, the Commercial PACE Toolkit, freely accessible, very hopefully easy to use, easy to find. Share it with stakeholders you're working with who have questions. The series of issue briefs prepared by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, I think, can really hone in on certain persistent problems or concerns you might hear from stakeholders. If you want to know more about CPACE and resilience, or CPACE and underserved communities, there's some great resources all in the toolkit. Additionally, the Energy and Building Market Assessment tool, as previewed today, it's the Excel file and user guide. They're both under the CPACE toolkit and linked here. And just to wrap up, encourage folks to stay connected with U.S. Department of Energy via our State and Local Solution Center, as well as our State and Local Spotlight, which is our monthly newsletter. It's a great way to hear about new CPACE resources and other opportunities and technical assistance coming out of DOE. And again, my contact information here. I'm happy to follow up with anyone who has questions. And just want to say thanks everyone for attending, and thank you, Dub, Charlene, and Texas PACE Authority for the opportunity today.
Thank you, thank you, Sean, for joining us and giving us a good overview and tutorial of this. As I mentioned at the outset, this webinar is recorded, so we'll have it available later for folks that weren't able to join live today. We know from hits on the YouTube webpage that a lot of people do that, so we'll have it there as a resource. And with that, we will end for the day and let you get to your green beer and basketball or whatever else you may have planned for the remainder of St. Patrick's Day. And look forward to seeing you next month for our T5 in April. So have a good day, everyone, and thanks for joining us.